Welcome to episode 2. We're going to be talking about what is functional fertility today. So this will be a great intro for those of you who are newer to the functional fertility approach, and it'll be a great refresher if you kind of understand what we do, but it's been a while since you've dug into this topic. So thank you for joining. I'm Courtney Saye. Let's get started. So this episode is going to be all about how functional fertility differs from the conventional approach to fertility. There are so many people struggling with infertility today, you guys. Statistics show it's somewhere between 1 in 5 and 1 in 6 couples that will struggle to get pregnant and be diagnosed with some form of infertility. These quote unquote alternative approaches, like functional fertility, which in my humble opinion, will eventually become mainstream, hopefully sooner than later, are gaining a lot of traction because we're having success with couples who are told there are no answers, the IVF has failed, we don't know why you can't get pregnant, you have PCOS, you've got to go to IVF, you have low AMH, there's really not much you can do besides donor eggs. All of these things keep coming up and people are feeling frustrated and at their wits' end with the conventional approach. And so they're turning to what you would call an alternative approach right now. And what I'll tell you a little bit more about my vision for the future looks like when we become more mainstream. And this is an integrated approach with the conventional method. So let's dig in. Okay, so to understand what functional fertility is, I like to first talk about the conventional approach. So traditional fertility, conventional fertility methods start with, it goes a little something like this most of the time. You know you want to get pregnant, you tell your OBGYN, my husband and I are trying, we're so excited, and they say that's great, try for 6 to 12 months, depending on how old you are, and then start taking a prenatal. And when it hasn't worked in 6 months, if you're over 35, or 12 months, if you're under 35, you come back and they say, okay, let's run some tests. And the tests that they run are barely scratching the surface. They tend to look at your day 3 hormones. They make sure you're ovulating. They make sure your tubes are open. Sometimes, but not always, you'll get a basic semen analysis for your partner. And much of the time, they don't find anything. And they say, this happens a lot. This is unexplained infertility. Let's start with Clomid. Let's start with letrozole. Let's start with a medicated cycle and see where we get. And then if that fails, they'll jump to IUI. And if that fails, they'll jump to IVF. Sometimes they'll skip over all of that and go straight to IVF. But it goes down that path for most people, regardless of where the starting point is. And the problem is that those tests that they're running are barely scratching the surface. There's actually 2 problems with the tests that they're running. They're barely scratching the surface, and the lab ranges they use, you guys, the lab ranges that are used in conventional medicine are based on an average of the population. Our population has gotten increasingly more and more and more unwell, especially in recent decades, and those lab ranges have gotten wider and wider and wider. They don't represent optimal cellular health and energy anymore. In fact, a lot of them, when you're outside of those lab ranges, you're at or close to a disease state, okay? That's not what we're looking for when we're trying to get and stay pregnant. When you look at lab ranges from a functional lens, which we do with blood work, you're going to spot problems much earlier that are impacting your ability to get and stay pregnant. And we go much deeper. Okay, I'm jumping ahead, but let's talk about, that's the traditional approach. By the way, this is a staggering number, and I wish it wasn't the case, but the average couple spends close to $70,000 when going through fertility treatments before they bring a baby home. Close to $70,000. So when people are like, just try IVF, yeah, that's great. It might work on the first try, and you may only be out $10,000 to $25,000, but that's not the case for the average couple, okay? So we're talking about a huge investment when you go down the fertility treatment rabbit hole. Not to mention, it is a huge investment of your emotional energy, of your time, of your body. There are a lot of side effects to pumping all of that into your body. Now, let's talk about the functional approach. Okay, when clients come to us, we do a deep intake. Tell me all of the things about your life. Tell me all the things about your lifestyle. Tell me all the things about your diet. Tell me all the things about your fertility history and your symptoms and all the things. And then we're going to work up a full panel of functional labs. What does that mean? People are like, what are functional labs? I already had labs run at my doctor. Okay, we do blood work, and some of it has some overlap with what your doctor does, but we run that, and that's a very small part of the panel we run as far as cost. And we like to run it because a lot of doctors won't run everything we need, because if they start asking for all these extra markers like a full thyroid panel and hemoglobin A1C and vitamin B12 and D, the insurance companies are going to call them and be like, we're going to drop you out of network if you keep doing this. So a lot of them, when clients ask for this stuff from their doctor, we get like 60% of what we need back, and it's a cheap test. It's an inexpensive test. So we run that. We look at what's going on in your gut. Like, what is happening in your gut? Your gut has such an intimate connection that you cannot unwind between your ability to conceive and carry and what's going on in there. We look deeply into micronutrients. Micronutrients is a fancy word for nutrients, minerals, amino acids, and antioxidants. These are things that you're getting from your diet and absorbing if your gut is functioning well. So those go hand in hand. Just had a client earlier today where I'm like, I got your micronutrient panel, I got your GI map. And she was devastated by how much was going on our micronutrient panel. She's like, I'm taking so many vitamins. Your gut's not functioning well, and here's what's going on in your gut, and that's why you're not absorbing it. So first we're going to work on your gut, and then we're going to work on replenishing those micronutrient stores. Okay, the blood work that we look at is really focused on looking at your detox pathways, looking for insulin resistance in the body, looking at your thyroid, at a full thyroid panel from optimal ranges. I will tell you guys that the vast majority of our fertility clients, the women, come to us dealing with some level of suboptimal thyroid function. And Western medicine has told them your thyroid looks fine, because the ranges they're using to look at it are so wide that, like, some of them have been told your thyroid looks fine and they can't poop, they can't get pregnant, they're exhausted all the time, and they're carrying around an extra 25 pounds. That is not fine. And if that's fine, like, that's not how we're trying to live over here, okay? We also look at your MTHFR status to see if you've got a variant on your MTHFR gene. That can play a big role in your ability to conceive and carry a pregnancy, and it's highly discounted by the Western side. They're like, it doesn't matter unless you've got a lot going on there. And even then, the research shows that you're up to 3 times as likely to deal with infertility and miscarriage, as well as deal with some symptoms day to day if you've got a variant there. So those are the things we're looking at with women who are coming into our practice. Men, we're looking at a sperm test that includes DNA fragmentation. This is something that is not routinely looked at with standard sperm tests, and it's going to catch issues beyond what those standard tests will look at. And our ranges are very different, you guys. Like, the standard ranges that are used in the US on those sperm tests, some of them would have been considered infertile years ago. Okay. And they're normal today because the average sperm volume has dropped so much in the last few decades, to the point where if these trends continue with sperm counts and testosterone, we're going to have none. Men are going to have no testosterone in like 50 years. So you don't want to be average today. You don't want your husband or your partner to be average today. Okay. So what did I miss? We're looking at all of these labs. We've done this deep intake. We start working with you very closely on nutrition. What's going on with your nutrition? Because that's a big tunable for most people. Now, a lot of clients who come into our practice are really working on healthy eating, and they're eating quote unquote healthy, but what is quote unquote healthy may not be eating right for fertility. Okay. Like, there are definite, fairly decent adjustments people need to make that are eating like healthy. So nutrition is a big one. And then you start getting these labs back, and you guys, this is the magic sauce. Like, having these practitioners on our team that are absolutely incredible at what they do. Absolutely incredible. And they are detectives who are looking between your labs, looking at your lifestyle, looking at your diet, and putting together these protocols that will help you get on a path to your baby. What does a protocol look like? A protocol is going to be some diet and lifestyle recommendations, as well as some supplement recommendations. And then we work with clients through the process of getting through those protocols. And this is one of the big keys to what we do, like our clients having a lot of success in our program versus people who come into us that have been to a naturopath or another functional medicine doctor who runs things a little bit differently. And they're like, they ran tests and like, they told me I had these few things and they gave me a bag of supplements and they sent me on my way. That frequently does not work. Our program, with the support model we have in place to support clients from taking their tests through getting the answers and all the emotions involved with that. Because by the way, you guys, when you get these functional labs back and you've been told most of your life, like there's nothing wrong, everything looks fine. And you're like, I don't feel good. Okay, I can't get pregnant. Okay, I keep having a miscarriage, but like everything's fine. Are you sure? And then we give you these labs back and we have real answers that make perfect sense with what you have going on in your life. There are two things that happen. Clients feel relief. Like, I knew it. I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew there was something going on. I knew I wasn't nuts. And then there's grief too, because a lot of you out there have you've been through a loss. You've been through a year or 3 years or 8 years of trying to conceive. You've dealt with symptoms in your body before you were trying to start conceiving that have made your day-to-day life less than it could be, that everybody told you like, you're fine. It's in your head. Maybe you have anxiety. That brings up some grief. So we work with clients through those emotions of relief and grief and then support them through the protocols because there are tweaks that need to be made. There is accountability that needs to happen. Getting through these protocols is work, but the magic sauce is really in finding these answers with the right practitioner and having them guide you to the other side. And that's why clients within our program have so much success going from like completely lost and I've been through hell to holding their baby in their arms. So I guess to kind of sum up what functional fertility is, like a lot of people like to talk about it as alternative or holistic. And to me, alternative evokes this air of like, woo-woo. I don't know how to describe it any differently than woo-woo. And it couldn't be any further from woo-woo because everything we do is based on data. It's based on science. The protocols are based on years and years of successful work with clients, okay? So holistic alternative definitely evokes this like, it's woo-woo, it's different, I don't know, it's like natural cuckoo. This is all based on data and science and what's actually going on in the body. And my dream, my hope for the future of fertility care in this country, I have a daughter now, you guys, she's going to be 13 soon. And by the time she and her friends are building their family, I will get emotional. I would love to see a world that I helped in whatever small way to create where OBGYNs around the country are connected with functional fertility practices like ours. And when your future daughter goes to them, when my daughter's best friend goes to them and says, I'm ready to have a baby, I got married last year, they say, that's amazing. I want you to go see this functional fertility person. You start working with them immediately. They get the answers to what's going on in their bodies. They work through protocols. And then they're pregnant in a much shorter time frame. They don't have all the pain and suffering that we've been through. That is my dream for the future. And that's, ultimately what we're working on, one day at a time, one family at a time, one new baby at a time. Some of the questions that come up frequently about functional fertility versus Western medicine. Clients will say, okay, well, I've been working with an endocrinologist. Like, should I stop working with them? Will I work with you? Like, do I need to get off all of my meds? What does that look like? And our goal is never to be like over here as functional fertility and Western medicine is way over here and we're at odds and we never agree on anything. I will tell you that some clients that we work with are on thyroid medication because of typically it's hypothyroidism. We don't really see much hyperthyroidism in women. And they need to be on it because Maybe they had Hashimoto's for a number of years, whatever it may be. Sometimes their thyroid is in such a state that they need that thyroid medication long term. The goal isn't always to get off of the medication. Now, I do have some firmly held beliefs about things like hormone replacement therapy. We get a lot of clients who come in who've worked with an endocrinologist and we're told, oh, you're not having a period. The answer is to take estrogen and then cycle on progesterone, and then you'll get your cycle back. And they're like, I got my period back, but I can't get pregnant. Well, you didn't get your period back. You're having a withdrawal bleed when you go off the progesterone every month. And then you take progesterone again 2 weeks later, and your body actually thinks it's already ovulated because progesterone doesn't come on deck until your body's ovulated. Wait, what? Yeah, the only way our bodies create progesterone is via ovulation. So when you start synthetically taking progesterone, your body's like, oh, I guess I already ovulated, like gonna stop that little cute hormonal dance I was doing to try to ovulate. And then you don't ovulate. So we have a lot of women we've worked with that were on that cycle for 2 months, for 15 months, and they go off of the hormone replacement therapy. It takes some time. None of this is an overnight fix. But within a few months of really committing and working on the protocols, this magical thing happens. Their body ovulates on its own. It is wild, you guys. So again, we are all for an integrative approach, but there are some things like that there are a lot of practitioners out there on the Western side that I'm like, what are you doing? You are actually giving these poor women a form of birth control when they want to have a baby. And then when they don't get pregnant, because of course they're not getting pregnant because their body's not ovulating, and you tell them they have to go to IVF, they believe you and they go to IVF, when in reality, they never needed it in the first place. So there are some sticking points that we have that are differing beliefs, but in general, an integrative approach works really, really well for a lot of people. Now, we've had couples who've tried IVF in the past who come to us and they're like, oh, and I'm going to go back to IVF. And I always say, why do you need to do it that way? But there's no judgment here. Clients will come through our program, and if you want to go back and try to have a baby with your spouse naturally, even if you've been through IVF 3 times, there's a good chance it can work, especially these unexplained infertility cases where they didn't know what was going on in the first place, and now they've figured it out and they've worked on it. And then some people are like, no, I want to go back to IVF. I have frozen embryos. I have whatever the reason may be. And that is amazing too. We have a client who is newly pregnant who came to us with PCOS, super frustrated and despairing, and got a lot of answers for her beyond just the PCOS. Why is the PCOS happening? And a few other things going on in her gut, some major things going on in her gut. She worked through our program for a few months. They decided they want to do IVF. And a lot of times with PCOS women, IVF can take a few cycles. They had a beautiful retrieval. They had more than expected make it to the blightocyst stage, and they got pregnant on their first try. That's not common, you guys. So anyway, the integrative approach can be beautiful, and I will tell you where my differing opinions are between us and Western medicine when there are things that are a little bit at odd. So what are the factors that can influence your ability to get and stay pregnant? People ask me this all the time, like, what should I be doing? And my answer is always, well, let's run the functional labs and see what's actually going on in your body, because that's going to dictate what those protocols look like. A one-size-fits-all solution is not the way to get to success. Now, I can tell you a few things that are going to be key factors in the majority of our cases. Nutrition is going to be a big one. Most of our clients are under eating, and they're under eating in a big way when they come to us, and they don't know it, because as women, we've been conditioned to think like calories in, calories out, gotta stay trim, get on a diet. If you're putting on weight, you want to eat less. And that translates to most people coming to us eating somewhere between 1,400 and 1,600 calories on average a day. You need about 2,500 calories a day as an active woman to have a healthy cycle. People are like, wait, can you hold on, back up. Did you say 2,500? There's no way I can eat that. I'm not hungry. I've got 20 extra pounds on. Like, the list goes on and on. And we work with our clients to get from where they are to where they need to be to support healthy thyroid function, which is going to support healthy ovulation and healthy pregnancy. There are other nutrition intricacies that we work on, but for sure that's the biggest one and most common that comes up. gut health and things going on in the gut are a major contributor to fertility challenges, as well as, not to mention, like, you don't feel good day to day when three of the like things that are most common in your house to eat make you feel like garbage, or three of your favorite foods make you feel like garbage, and you are bloated and you have gas and you feel constipated every other day. Like, that's not a fun way to live. And your body's also not doing what it needs to do to support optimal fertility when you're dealing with things going on in your gut. Hormone balance is the first one. Like, that's the first thing people come and complain to me about. They say, my hormones are way out of whack. We need to fix my hormones. Let's fix my hormones. I have low progesterone. I'm not ovulating. My estrogen is high. Okay, here's the thing about all of those hormones. They are a symptom of the problem. And when they're out of balance, you're not going to get and stay pregnant, but they're not the problem. Okay, what do I mean by that? I mean, the same thing I mean is, let's say you had a headache. That headache is not the problem. It's a problem for you. Like, you don't feel good. You want to get rid of it. But there's something else happening in the body that's causing that headache. And it's the same thing with hormones. And we tend to see, like, let's talk about low progesterone because it's super common. And this happens a lot if you're not ovulating or your ovulation's really weak. There's nutrition issues going on. There are often quite a few, like we see a high level of micronutrient deficiencies going on with these clients with low progesterone. The thyroid is not functioning optimally, and there's things going on in the gut. Those are the things you got to fix the progesterone. Taking progesterone every month isn't going to make your ovulation stronger and better. It may prop up progesterone and you know, may be helpful. We actually use progesterone with clients in the luteal phase after they've confirmed ovulation if the case warrants it. But you got to work on the underlying causes because progesterone isn't the problem. It's all of these other things that are out of whack in the body. There are also things in your lifestyle and your environment that are a major part of the issue, and our modern life normalizes most of this, like constant stress, like being on your phone all day, like available. Even those of you who are not like big on, checking social media all the time, you're available all the time. Most of you don't step away from being available 24/7. And our way of relaxing, quote unquote, relaxing at night is scrolling through our phone, which is not relaxing. It's sending us into fight or flight. We're not sleeping enough. If you're not getting to bed by 10 p.m. every night and getting at least 7, most women need 8, some women need 9 hours of sleep a night, you're not getting enough sleep. And if you're like, but I'm getting 8 hours of sleep and I go to bed at 12:30 and I get up at 8, your body's doing some really, really critical detoxification and rebuilding work during those earlier hours in the night that you're missing out on, and it's not the same. Okay? Toxins in a lifestyle, huge one. This is a rabbit hole that's going to be its own whole podcast later on. But the makeup you're using, the shampoo you're using, the body lotion you're using, the things that you're cleaning your house with, the foods that you're eating that aren't organic, all of that can build up a toxic load in the body. And look, the goal isn't perfection here, but the goal is reducing the toxic load in the body so we're not like a rain barrel spilling over and having all of these symptoms because our toxic load is so heavy. The other thing that I always say, thanks mom, thanks dad, genetics, right? Like, some of us, especially in this community, didn't get the lucky part of the gene pool as far as fertility, gut issues, thyroid issues, all of that stuff goes. And genetics and epigenetics can play a huge role in how our body is exhibiting these imbalances that can lead to infertility, that can lead to other symptoms. And look, everybody's coming at it from a different. I tell clients it's genetics, and epigenetics are basically like how the environment has impacted your genetics, or it's like genetics load the gun and epigenetics pull the trigger, if you will. So you've got the lifestyle or environmental factors. You've got your diet now, and if you are 95% of women in the United States, in the past, your diet may have been very dysfunctional or partially dysfunctional because the diet culture thing is huge for women in their 20s to 40s. And then you've got traumas in your life, you've got stress, and all of that stacks to create imbalances in your body and your biochemistry that we can see through functional labs at a different rate. Like your neighbor or your cousin might be eating Doritos and drinking a bunch of beer and on their fourth kid, and that makes you feel a certain way. But it's because we all have these very unique bodies and histories and lifestyles. So the next, couple episodes down, we are going to talk about some deeper case studies. I'm going to bring on a client who has been through our program and went from, I won't steal the thunder and tell her whole story, but went through a lot to have her first baby and tried again until she found us and worked through our program, and now is pregnant with her second baby. And she'll tell you all about the answers she found within our program, the protocols she worked through, what the support looks like, how much different it really is in functional fertility versus the traditional, conventional path. So I won't steal her thunder and tell her story, but there are lots of stories of women who came to us with PCOS, with endometriosis, with tons and tons of gut issues, but all diagnosed or undiagnosed, nothing's going on with you. They couldn't ovulate on their own. They weren't having a period. And they came in very, the theme of all of it is hopelessness. I don't have any answers. I don't want to do IVF, or I don't want to do IVF again. And they worked with us and were able to get pregnant. So we're going to be sharing more of those stories on the podcast as we go on. We'll go deeper on it. You'll get to hear from some of these people about their journeys, because I know there are many of you in the community who are dealing with very similar stories. And I know when I went through my own infertility journey years ago, it was so comforting to hear stories of others, to hear from people who had been there. I'm also going to tell you about my own journey in a little bit more depth than we did in episode 1, in a future one, but I really want you to hear from some people who've been through our programs. Now, one of the things to note about functional fertility is, outcomes will vary, and a lot of the success of our clients really depends on the commitment level within the program. This isn't, okay, here's your answer and here's your pill and here's your shot and you do these things and it's a 70% success rate because you did these things. No, it's actually a higher success rate if you do a lot more investment, you actually dig in and you make some changes in your nutrition, you make some changes in your lifestyle, you work through the protocols to correct the biochemical imbalances. The percentage of success is pretty high over here. But the variance in success rates really depends on commitment to the protocols within the program. It's also high. This work is highly individualized. Like I said, on the traditional side, it's medicated IUI, IVF. The path to your baby in functional fertility is going to look a little bit different for everyone. We definitely have themes of things that happen in the body or that we see over and over again in the body. But that path to baby is going to look a little bit different because no one comes to us looking exactly the same. Lifestyle, history, genetics, trauma, biochemistry, things going on in their body, that's all different for everyone. Now, the really fun part of the program, it's my favorite when a client messages us before they tell their husband that they just got a positive pregnancy test, cue the waterworks every time. But what's really fun along the way that clients don't expect when they sign up is that you actually improve your day-to-day quality of life so much while you're working through the program, because optimal fertility is optimal health. Optimal health is optimal fertility. So everything we're working on to optimize your fertility is also optimizing your overall health. And I had a client recently say, I had no idea, this is living. I didn't know what I was missing out on before this. I feel so much better. This is what it actually feels like to be alive. And that's not something that people tend to come into our programs seeking, but it's a really cool thing to watch them get as they progress through our program. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up today. There's so much more I could say here about this topic, and we will definitely continue to dive in. Look, functional fertility is really a way to figure out what's going on in the body, to get those answers to why you can't get and stay pregnant. And oh, by the way, why do I also feel tired and have headaches and I'm constipated and I can't lose those last 10 pounds? getting answers to all of that, getting a path to your baby that is based on data and science, and having a compassionate, super skilled practitioner walk the path of getting there with you. That sums up what's different from us versus the traditional approach. I want you to keep listening. We're brand new. This is episode 2. So there's going to be a lot shared on here about, like I said, we're going to talk to you about some cases that we've worked through and let you hear from some of the people who've worked with us and their experience. A lot of them have been through traditional fertility treatments before they found us. Some of them go after too. But we're going to dive deep on gut health. We're going to talk about like what is a micronutrient? What is micronutrients again? And how do you get deficiencies there? We're going to talk about what hormonal birth control use in the past can do. We're going to talk about the thyroid a lot. We're going to talk about the MTHFR test. And we're also going to take questions from all of you. So you can submit questions to us on Instagram is the easiest way to do it. Just DM our account. It's Fertility Functionally. Anything you want to have covered on the next week's episode, and we'll have time at the end of each episode to go through listener Q&A and get your questions answered. Because what I'm most excited for about this podcast is that I get to really go deep with you guys every week. Instagram is amazing for like a minute here, 3 minutes there. Here's a quick carousel, but this gives you an opportunity to really, really learn and go deep each week. So please subscribe to follow along, share this episode with your sister or your best friend or your cousin who's trying to have a baby or anybody else that you think might benefit from it. And again, leave us questions for future episodes and tune in next week. We're going to have a great guest on the pod and you're going to learn a lot from her. She is a good friend of mine who specializes in thyroid health in her functional practice. And so we are going to geek out on thyroid health. If you think it might be part of your problem because you're tired or you're constipated, tired or fatigued, brain fog, you have GI issues, your hands and feet are cold. Like even if you've been told your thyroid's normal, you may have a thyroid issue. And she's a great friend of mine. We have a lot of fun together. It's going to be a really fun episode. So tune in for that next week. And I am so just grateful to be able to share all of this and have all of you here with me. I hope you have a great rest of your day.